All right, Sean, welcome into the show, man. Great having you on. We had Jay Billis on a couple weeks ago. It's nice to get another ESPN analyst on with us, so welcome in.
I mean, it's pretty hard. I mean, because Drew is such a difficult guy. None of us like to cover. His personality being so introverted makes it really difficult for us to get a lot of information on. So it'd be surprising that ESPN guys would be so willing to come on to this podcast.
It is quite the challenge. I'm really trying to step out of my comfort zone with this.
I feel
you're
like
doing good so far. I feel like you're doing pretty well. Like I've watched, I saw the one with Jay Billis. I think that Drew, there's something here. Like you're growing into something. I'm proud of you.
We talked about it in Moraga when we did that interview about me stepping into this space, and just been taking a lot of your stuff that you told me to heart, man, and trying to improve a little bit.
No, you're doing a great job. I also talked during that interview to see if you would actually come back to college, and you said if you did, you'd be Perry Ellis. So congratulations on creating the opportunity to be the oldest living player in college basketball.
It is a milestone I'm really proud of.
We had a good bite on episode 1 when Drew talked about being this generation's Perry Ellis. He does take a lot of shit though from announcers and stuff, and it's just a running joke, man. This guy's 37, still running around playing college basketball, 29-10. Like, guy's got to go.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. In this day and age of college athletics, if you have the stats that Drew has, like you're usually not around college for that long, But what I appreciate and I value, and I got in this discussion a lot with Doug McDermott. And when Doug was about to break the 3,000 point barrier down at Creighton, everybody was like, what kind of pro is Doug McDermott going to be? And my response to that was, I don't care. I don't care. Like, I'm going to appreciate the fact that he's one of the best basketball players that we have in college basketball, and he's putting up historically great numbers, and he's going to be remembered for a very, very long period of time. And when I look at Drew's career, and I've talked to Drew about this before in the past, I cover college basketball. I don't know what Drew's going to be at the next level. I don't know how great he's going to be. I don't know how long his career is going to be. I don't know. I don't have a clue. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. But what I do know is this. In this era of college basketball, he's one of the all-time greats. And when he's done at the end, and I would say this with him here, and I've said it on air, so it's not like I'm saying anything I wouldn't already have said. But when it's all said and done this season at Gonzaga, and you look at all the all-time greats that have ever come through that program, it's going to be a very hard discussion point if Drew Timme's name is not mentioned in the first 2 or 3.
I couldn't agree more. I know Drew's not going to speak on that, but
why not, Drew?
Flattering me too much. You guys are flattering me too much. I appreciate that, but yeah, making me blush
Besides
a little bit, man.
His mom paid me $25 for me to say that. Also dropping his sister's a great volleyball player. So we'll just move forward with all of that now. Let's go.
Sean, thank you for bringing up Drew's mom. Drew owes his mom a public apology for what he said about her on last week's podcast.
That's
Drew,
facts.
go ahead, please. You owe your mom a nice apology, so let's get that out of the way.
Mom, I'm really sorry for calling you a dick on air in any fashion of the calling you a dick. So I apologize because you're a wonderful mother and I'm lucky to have you in my life. So my sincerest apologies to you.
That was beautiful.
You
Shout out to
really
Mama
do
Timmy.
that,
All
right?
right, let's get in.
Come on.
He did.
I did.
He did. And you know why? Because it was over. She told him to get rid of his, this old ass pair of shoes that needed to go. She shouldn't even have had to tell him that.
Between that and the headband discussion point, I mean, let's get some new things. You've got enough NIL money to take care of that now.
I mean, but it's one of those things where I just have equity, buckets and sweat equity in that, and it's hard for me to detach myself from that. You're a former player, you have your certain things that you like done and everything, but it's an attachment thing. It's hard for me to give up something that I've invested so much in and I've got so much return from.
I don't know, man. I think you got to do away with the senior year of high school headband. It's just people were agreeing with you too on that. But anyway, let's get into the thick of this Alabama game because I'm curious. I know a lot of people are curious to hear what you guys think about it. You guys. Zags pulled out a 100-90 win over number 4 ranked Alabama. You guys were 15th, so you jumped to 11th in the polls. They bumped down to 9. I want to get, Sean, your thoughts first. I'm assuming you watched the game, just what you saw from both sides, but obviously Gonzaga being able to just, pull out a gritty win on the road.
What I think this team, and I'll be interested to get Drew's thoughts on this, but from afar, and I haven't been around this team yet this year. The turn of the year, he'll get sick of me real quick. But watching this team, I think they've grown quite a bit because of this scheduling. And one area that I think that we often talk about on the national level when it comes to March, not so much me because I'm around them enough to know them and I see them on such a consistent basis, but the discussion point largely comes: are they tough enough to win? Are they tough enough to win the type of games that they're going to need to win a national championship, and in particular at the defensive end of the floor? And I think when you look at this game, this over Saturday, I would say the answer is yes. And the shooting percentage, I think people get skewed on the shooting percentage. Obviously, Alabama shot a very good percentage, but the number of turnovers that this defense is creating and the number of points that it's creating off of those turnovers, if you take those turnovers and you add it into their shooting percentage, well, they're not shooting 51%. They're going to be shooting around 40%. Well, that's a number that you can live with if you're Mark Few. And I think that they're disruptive at that end. I think they've grown at that end. And I think that complementary parts around Drew, in particular, have started to gain more consistency. And those are two areas that I think that we saw on Saturday in the win against Alabama that were huge and needed to show up on a big stage against a team that had already knocked off two top-ranked teams in the country and was playing with a great deal of momentum, even coming off that game against Memphis in front of essentially a home crowd. That's what I call a payback for the battle in Seattle from the year before.
It was kind of like the roles reversed perfectly for that game. We were the high seed, we were the low seed, they were the higher seed, and then the thing flipped. But yeah, to your point, I do think, especially with the turnovers, that was the point of emphasis for us because we have been struggling as a unit to score consistently in every game. I think we saw that even against like Michigan State, Xavier, and IU. We've put games together where we're solid, but we haven't done anything spectacular. In this game, our defense kind of dictated our offense, which has kind of been the thing that we haven't had is we let our offense dictate our defense, not the other way around. And I think that was huge in us getting our shooting percentage up and giving people more confidence, was getting easy buckets off defense, which I think was like I said at the end of the game, we passed the final because this was a long semester of classes for us with all this schedule and everything. And this one was if you look at it realistically, our last quad one win, I would probably say. Definitely quad one win. So it was huge for us to get this win just because, we lost to Baylor and Purdue. But the fact that we were able to just combine our defense with our offense, not our offense with our defense, I think was the reason why we came out on top.
Well, and to me, the defense has completely shifted from a year ago. Because when you have Chet along the back line and his ability to protect the rim and alter shots, so it wasn't just the block shots, but it was also the ability to alter shots, how you pressure, what your coverages are like out on the ball when you're extending out from the guard position changed because it's not a great shot blocking team. It's more of a positional defensive team along the back line. And that's a different. And so when you make that shift, it does take time for players to adjust when you lose somebody that's the number one pick in the draft, basically. I know he didn't go number one, but Chet was there in that discussion point all season long. And so when you lose that, you come back, and yeah, there's a lot of continuity that still remains on this roster, but now everything kind of has to shift to the personnel that's there. And I think Anton Watson's done a great job. I thought one of the things that Mark has always done, and Drew thrives in this space, is against pressure, bringing the ball up the floor. And when Alabama went to that press late and he brought the ball up the floor and was like, the hell with this, I'm just going to smash it on the iron, and we're going to go ahead and put a punctuation mark on this thing. It's great to see because Drew knows this too. Anton Watson could have started at a lot of schools and played a lot of huge minutes over the last couple of years and been a all-conference caliber player. I truly believe that. And we've seen that in flashes. We've seen that when he's had moments. But for him to be able to do what he's doing right now, and in particular in that game, I thought was really huge for this team, not just now, but moving forward, because he needs to continue to grow in his confidence. He needs to continue to understand that all the work that he's put in at practice against so many great players over the last couple of years has paid off. And like it has for many other bigs that have gone through the Gonzaga program, my sense is that when you're patient and you wait your turn, sometimes it really does reward you. And I think by the end of this year, I think a lot of other people will start to notice just how good of a player Anton Watson is.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I really think he's our team's X factor because the last game where we had a really impactful win was Kentucky, and he was our best defender. He scored the ball. I brought the ball up against the pressure, like you said earlier, but then they switched topping on me. So then Shebe was on Anton, and Anton did the exact same thing I did. And it changes the whole dynamic of our team. And his defense is life-saving. It's incredible. I mean, I'm not the best shot blocker around, and when I'm the team's leading shot blocker, that's a little bit of a drop-off from Chet. So his role and impact is so vital to this team, and just him continuing to get better at each and every game is going to be so huge for us, especially when it gets to March and down the road.
And just for context, excuse me, Anton had 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. He was doing a little bit of everything, and obviously, like you guys are saying, he is a little bit under the radar. And some more numbers, if people aren't aware, you guys turned Bama over 21 times. They only turned you over 9. And then I said to you on episode 6, when we were previewing the game, about, if they kill you on the boards and you give them too many second chance opportunities, it's going to be lights out. It's going to look like that Texas game. And they only out rebounded you by 3 on the offensive boards, and then 7 for the totality of the game. So really neutralize them the best you could. Obviously, Brandon Miller had 36 points, freshman phenom. What was your guys' takeaways on him? Because he was just fantastic. I mean,
dude, he's a thoroughbred. I mean, he is the best freshman in the country. And it's funny because when the PK tournament, and I know Drew was in the mix of playing in that event, but when we were watching back in studio during Feast Week, I said 5 years ago Trae Young played in this event, and when Trae Young played in this event, everybody left saying, "Man, Trae Young, that dude, he eclipsed the Bagley, Ayton, and Porter trio that we came into the year talking about." Because he started throwing up silly numbers. And I think that even though he stumbled a little bit in the final game for Alabama in the PK tournament, you just watch the way this kid can play. He can flat out score the basketball. And he's a 3-level scorer. He can do it from beyond the arc, where he's ultra efficient. He's got great form. His release is consistent. He can take you with fluidity to the rim. It's not like he's a crazy, elite, super high flyer, but he's a good athlete. And then that little step back that he had late in the game, where he got it on the if we're looking at his basket on the right hand side, down low, and then that little step back, elevate over the top from the mid range. I mean, that's unstoppable with his length. So he's going to be a great pro. He's the best freshman in the country. He's going to be a lottery pick, going to be a top 5 pick in my eyes, at least heading into the NBA draft next year, if he continues to do this. Because one of the other areas that we don't talk about a lot is he is getting better at the defensive end of the floor. He is wanting to compete down there, and you kind of have to if you're playing for Nate Oates. But he's trying to compete and impact the game at that end, and he's allowing his scoring to kind of come through. And when he gets going, I don't know how you turn him off. And certainly he did not get turned off at all on Saturday.
I mean, if it wasn't for him, I think we would have won by 20. I mean, he was in even the shots he was making. It's like, what can I do? Like, what can any of us do? And thank God the trap worked, and he didn't shoot it over the trap, because he probably would have made it over the trap. But
well, let me ask you this, though, Drew. You've played against a lot of pros. You've seen a lot of the best players in the country over the course of your career. Where does a Brandon Miller, in your eyes, kind of fit into that mold of those elite players that Gonzaga has faced during your time in Spokane?
He has to be up there. I mean, even though I played him in high school, he kind of reminded me of Cam Reddish, just from the fact that he's bigger, and he's kind of like a guard, and he has that nice little flow to his game. It's just smooth and silky, which not a lot of big people have when handling the ball and stuff. And it doesn't matter. He can shoot over you because he knows how to use his length and his size. And it's just one of those things where it's like, you kind of got to enjoy these players when they come through, because they don't come through the door every day. And it's he definitely is a top 5 lottery guy. Like, it was pretty special to obviously I wasn't a fan of it, but it was quite special to kind of be in that
You can be a fan of it after the game when you've won. I mean, you've already won. You're walking off the floor. You can be like, yeah, that guy lit us up, but we got the dub. So I will tell you this. There was massive disappointment by my 12-year-old on the game. He was watching the game. And late in the contest, somebody got to the free throw line, and my 12-year-old goes, oh, man, he's going to have a 30-piece. And then clang. And I was like, don't worry. He's not going to miss 2 in a row. Clang. And finishes with 29.
We were just talking about this right before you got on. I literally I screwed up. I looked up at the scoreboard. I was like, oh, I have 29. and I just got fouled. I started smiling, and I was like, oh, yeah, all I have to do is make one. And I'm like, I'm going to make the first one, and I can I can airball the second one. I won't care. I missed the first one, and I was so rattled. I was like, oh, no, there's no way I make the second one. And lo and behold, I missed it, got pulled, and I was like, I deserve to get pulled for that. That's embarrassing. But I got my 10th board, so I was like, I'll take it. I'll take the double-double over 30 and 9.
You got the double-double, man, but like 30 and 10 just sits different than that 29 and 10. You know what I mean? Like it's only 1 point.
It sounds way better. No one's more disappointed in that than myself. I was too excited. I was being a child. I was very happy.
That's all right. My 12-year-old was pretty disappointed about it as well. So, I mean,
I'm glad.
He felt the pain.
Our listeners love Drew's accountability. So with that, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, so much more coming up on Sean Farnham, his journey from playing to coaching that we're going to dive into all in here right when we come back. And we're back on episode 7 of the Gimme Timme Podcast with Drew Timme and myself, Noah Buono, here with our guest, the man himself, Sean Farnham. Before we dive into it, Drew, please give our wonderful listeners their friendly reminder.
Guys, if you don't mind, please write a review, share this. If you want to end up on Santa's nice list, we really appreciate it. And nobody wants a lump of coal, so go ahead and do that for us.
You're sticking with that one 2 weeks in a row. I like it.
It is the holiday season.
Christmas is coming up. Yeah. I got to.
No, it's good. It's good. No one wants coal for Christmas. He's damn right. Sean, I want to start off this second segment. Take us through the journey of you walking on at UCLA. You pass up other scholarship offers, and then you get a scholarship there, and then you get it taken away 2 years later because of a high-powered recruiting class. Like, just some of your college journey. Walk us through this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was very unconventional. I mean, I'm old. Drew's young, so things are way different for him. But back in the day, you didn't really have video clips. You had no social media. You had no. You got seen at the events you went to, or you didn't. Period. And you got recruited mainly through your high school, and that was a much larger portion than club basketball was. I played for the Oakland Soldiers with guys like Eddie House. Like, it was great. It was fun, and it was high level. And I had a good high school career at De La Salle, which is the football powerhouse out of Northern California. And we had great basketball tradition with guys like Brent Berry, John Berry, Drew Berry, Joe McClain, the great financial guy that played at Arizona with the Arizona Wildcats and went to the Final Four, I think, back in '92. So a really rich tradition. But my senior year, we got to the state championship. And at that point in time, I really thought I was going to go to the University of Montana or the Air Force Academy. Those were the two schools that were most heavily recruiting me. And Santa Clara had kind of jumped in, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll be a Bronco, like stay close to home. And the next thing you know, it goes to state championship game. UCLA loses to Princeton, and their coaching staff flew to recruit a bunch of guys from Crenshaw. And I ended up going off. I think I had 22, 15, 5 and 5 in the state championship game.
That'll do it.
Yeah. So at the end of that night, I got about 35 scholarship offers that came through basically all at once.
Wait. 35? What?
Don't say that so nonchalant, man.
But look, a lot of them were small schools. They weren't NCAA tournament teams and stuff like that. But they just were like, damn, how do we miss this guy? That's a big game on a big stage, and it was huge. And we really weren't given much of a chance against Crenshaw. They were a powerhouse out of Southern California. We had a 3-point lead with about 4 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. And so we were rolling that night, and it was a great night to have a great game. And we've all had those nights, whether it was on that stage or a different stage. You have a good game on the right day, it can change things real quick for you. And so I had that. And then my high school coach said, hey, listen, I gotta be honest though with you. If UCLA was to offer you an opportunity to be on their team, would you take some of these scholarship offers to smaller schools, or would you want to be a Bruin? And I was like, well, coach, I mean, UCLA just won a national championship in '95. To me, I also was very realistic. I knew I wasn't going to be a pro. You know what I'm saying? I kind of there comes a moment where you tap out as an athlete, and you kind of go, okay, hey, listen, who am I? Am I comfortable with who I am? I was comfortable with who I was in high school. I knew I was a really good high school player. I thought if I played at the smaller level, I could definitely help a team win. If I went to a UCLA level, I'd be playing with a bunch of pros, and I probably wasn't going to have that large of a role. But the academic opportunity, the networking opportunity, And for me, the biggest chance was to potentially try to play for a national championship and wanted to be on a winning team that went to the tournament every single year. And so I told my high school coach, I said, I probably would go to UCLA. And he goes, okay, well, here's Coach Herrick's number. Call him tomorrow. So all day long, I'm sitting there like waiting for 5 o'clock. And at like 4:57, I'm like, I can't wait to call this guy anymore. Like, so I call Jim Herrick up, national championship coach. And I said, hey, Coach Herrick, I know I'm a little bit early at Sean Farnham. And he goes, well, you passed your first test because that evidently you understand that it's important for me to understand how much you want to be a Bruin. And I was like, oh. I said, well, I've been sitting here for the last 3 hours staring at this phone waiting for this time. And he goes, okay, so let's talk about it. I've seen you play one game. I'm not going to offer you a scholarship, but I'm going to offer you a spot. You have a spot. I'm going to bring you down on an official visit. You're going to get all the bells and whistles, but I've only seen you play one game. I'm not offering a kid I've seen play one game a scholarship. I said, Coach, that's fair enough. I'm going to earn it. And so what happened is over the course of that summer, I drove down in my car. I slept on the floor of Bob Myers, your executive of the year in the NBA perennially for the Golden State Warriors. Slept on his couch, made all the morning workouts, did all the open gym runs, played in the games with the pros, then came back home, then came back down, did the same thing on my manager's couch. And Cameron Dollar and Charles O'Bannon went into coach, and he was asking about how the workouts were going. He said, listen, that freshman that you brought in, like he's on time. He's early every single time. He's committed. He's good. And Jim was like, all right. So when I came back down, I moved in and we're walking across campus. He goes, hey, Sean, I need you to come by my office today. I was like, all right. So I come by the office. He goes, you need to call your parents. And I was like, why? And he goes, because you're on full ride scholarship. And it was one of the most surreal moments I think I've ever had in my life still to this day. It meant the world to me. He ended up getting fired shortly thereafter. But that kind of was the way it happened. And, I chose the path that was harder. I chose the path that was more difficult. I chose the path that I knew was going to limit my playing time and limit my role. But I look back on it now, 22 years post-graduation, and I couldn't be happier with how my life has turned out. And I would go back and do it all over again. Not a single minute played more, not a single point scored more. Nothing would change. And I would go back and do it all over again because being part of UCLA basketball, in particular at that time, was immensely special. And the talent, the players that we had around me during those 4 years was just, silly. It was just, we had pros on top of pros. And it was a great run and a lot of fun.
How did you know at such a young age, though, like the value and the importance of like the networking world, and to like, yeah, I could go to like a Montana State, or I could go to UCLA, the best college basketball program in the history of college basketball, and just network my balls off, like simultaneously while you're playing hoops, getting stronger, going to college, partying, doing everything you were doing, like. But like, was that networking part like the forefront of your mind, like when you made that decision, because it's kind of led you into so many other avenues?
Originally, it was I just wanted to play on a team that had a chance to win a national championship. And my freshman year, we went to the Elite Eight. We should have been in the Final Four. We won the conference. We'd won 14 straight games going into this tournament. We were the hottest team in the tournament field. And unfortunately, we had an injury to Jelani McCoy, who was a pro, our center. And he missed the game against Minnesota. We had a 10-point lead in San Antonio, Texas, in the Alamo Dome in 1997, and we lost it late. Otherwise, I think we probably would have won that championship that Arizona won. So that was probably the first thing in my mind. The second thing in my mind, again, was, I don't know if it's because of my parents. I'll give my parents credit. I won't say things about my parents like Drew does, like I love my parents.
Yeah, he's rude.
But, the thing for me was my dad was a police officer in San Francisco. My mom was a part-time dental assistant. I didn't grow up with I went to De La Salle, but it wasn't like I was, living the high life and got all these bells and whistles and, just some kid that had everything at his fingertips. And my parents really taught me at a young age to value the challenges of life. And if I would have gone to a Montana or an Air Force Academy, sure. Especially at Air Force Academy, I would have started my freshman year. I would have played for 4 years. I would have won a total of probably 15 games in those 4 years. It would have been, they weren't great at all when I was getting, it would have been nasty. It would have been horrible. And I always believe that when you surround yourself with the best, it brings out the best within you. And so what I've tried to do my whole life is surround myself with people that are better than me. And because that's inevitably they're gonna help elevate me. They're gonna show me the way, and then I'm gonna put in my time and my effort to make sure that I get to where I've wanted to get to. I think that's why I've gotten to where I'm at ESPN. But when you go to UCLA and it's Charles O'Bannon and Toby Bailey and J.R. Henderson, who are all part of that national championship team in '95, and then it's Baron Davis, Earl Watson, Matt Barnes, Jerron Rush, Jerome Moiso, Dan Gadzarich, Jason Capono. I mean,
loaded.
I think I said Matt Barnes, but if I didn't, Matt Barnes, throw him in there as well. I mean, these were my teammates for multiple years at UCLA. So every day at practice, I was getting just beat up and just tossed around. But I was like, what can I do? If it works against them, I think it'll work out on the court. And so inevitably to see that pay off from, playing 9 games in 30 minutes my freshman year, 9 games, 18 minutes my sophomore year, to then starting in the NCAA tournament my junior year, becoming a starter for a majority of my senior year in a role that I had to reinvent and figure out how did I fit in the picture. Because in high school, and you guys all know this, when you're in high school and you're good enough to be a D1 player, here's what happens. You get the ball as often as you want the ball. Your coach doesn't pull you out of the game unless you're A, in foul trouble, B, you're up by 30, or C, you've looked over and been like, I'm feeling a little tired. You should probably give me a quick blow. That's just the reality if you're a Division I basketball player in high school. Because high school teams don't have a bunch of Division I guys hanging around. So then you go to UCLA and I'm picking splinters out of my ass for, the first 3 years, the first 2 years in particular. I had to figure out wait, I'm not a scorer. They don't need me to score. What can I do that nobody else wants to do on this team? And what I figured out was nobody wanted to set the screen. Nobody wanted to catch the ball at the top of the key and just reverse it right away without even looking for their shot, without even looking for a driving seam to keep the time into the offense going. Nobody was willing to dive over the top of tables to save a loose ball. Nobody was willing to take charges. Those were the things that I started figuring out that I was like, wait, if I do this exceptionally well, I could get a role for myself on this team. And lo and behold, my first start was against Arizona my junior year, and it was right after New Year's. And I mean, I knew Drew would never be in this situation, but we had a practice on January 1st. And let's just say some of our guys were not ready to go. They had
New Year's. I mean,
they had a good time on the 31st, and we're like, ah. And here we are playing an undefeated Arizona team, and Lav looks up and goes, "Who the hell wants to start against Arizona?" I said, "I do." He goes, "Fine, you're starting against Arizona." And I was like, "What did I just do?" I literally thought I had to hit pause. And my parents were coming down. They had no idea. I didn't tell anybody that I was starting. I got the videotape, and I wore out the videotape in the 24 hours I had of watching the person I was going to defend, what their go-to move is when they catch it there, where do they want it, what's the percentages of this, long before analytics. And it was a VHS, which Drew probably doesn't even know anything about, but you got to actually put the whole cassette into the thing, press play.
I know a little bit about the VHS. Come on now.
All right. A little bit. You're pretty young.
I'm a 2000s baby.
Minimal experience with it too, but we had our run.
That's good. That's
recording good. WWE,
we can totally go down that if you want to. We can go down that path with you. I'll dance that dance. But the interesting thing was I ended up starting, played pretty well defensively. I did exactly what I wanted to do. And then after that, it kind of became, I started and we won and we beat Arizona. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. And then all of a sudden I didn't play for the next 4 games. And I was like, damn, I kind of did what I was supposed to do. Why am I not? Then we take a loss and Lav was pissed off again. So he's like, fine, Farnham, you're starting. And we go against USC. I end up setting my career high in points and rebounds in the game. And the next thing you know, I'm starting the rest of the way out, and we never lost. That was the thing. In the games that I started, we never lost in the regular season. The only 2 losses I had as a starter came in the postseason.
Damn, that's impressive.
I did my research. It said that you were 19-2 with Sean Farnham as a starter. So you have your bragging rights.
Sounds like you were the key to success.
No, but Drew, look, your roles changed over your college career from where you were as a freshman to where you are now. And sometimes there are guys, and you've had guys that I think have played with you. And I look at that program too overall. I think go back to a guy like Mike Hart. He was a glue guy. Like he really helped Gonzaga win games on a consistent basis. And I know that was before your time, but you've had guys that kind of like you put them out on the floor and all of a sudden things kind of flow pretty nicely for a good 5-minute stretch. And then you put in the guys that you need to play well and things take off. And so my role was really 5 minutes at the start of the game to kind of establish the flow, establish the rhythm, establish the energy, provide that energy for all of my teammates. They'd sub me out and put in a lottery pick and put them out on the floor. And then I'd sit there and then come back out in the second half and do the same thing. And if we were up by enough, I'd probably get some more burn at the end of the game. But that was pretty much it. And I've never shied away from that. I loved the fact that I carved that out and I created that. Like that wasn't given. I created that.
Yeah, no, that's a super cool mindset. And I think that's something that gets lost a lot in today's game. So kind of just on your point of like embracing challenges, and sometimes you have to take a step back to take some steps forward. I mean, how do you feel about the transfer portal, I would say? And it seems like, at least with the number of transfers, that it's kind of like people taking the easy way out in a lot of cases, which I know isn't the case for everyone, but it's hard not to think that. And I would say like someone like you who's literally been through every situation, scholarship, no scholarship, taken away, earned back, doing the dirty work. Like, that's got to annoy you a little bit, at least is how you played and how you were brought up, I would say.
It did, but truth be told, I told Steve Lavin I was transferring after my sophomore year and had a meeting with him and my dad. And I told him, I said, listen, I don't think this is working. And I had a lot of people that I knew I could call and I'd get on scholarship right away and have a role. And I was just really frustrated. And my dad stopped me at the top of the hill in Westwood, overlooking the entire campus right by the track stadium at UCLA's campus, and said, you take basketball out of the equation. You want to leave this? And I said, no. And he goes, all right, let's go back down the hill. So we walked back down the hill. I walked back into Lav's office and I said, listen, here's the deal. I'm going to go back home. I'm going to train. I'm going to get to my personal best that I can get to. I said, but I want to fight. I want to fight for this. And he said, cool, let's fight. And so, I mean, look, I can't fault somebody for transferring. There's a myriad of reasons why you transfer. Sometimes it's a bad fit. Sometimes you want an opportunity to play at a higher level or an opportunity to win. You know, it's not always about me. You know, I think we give transfers a bad rap, and you've had a lot of transfers around you over your time in Spokane. I think Mark does a really good job of finding the right transfers that are not going to be disruptive to the culture of the program. I think some programs rely a little bit too heavily upon it, and we see that with the inconsistencies, in particular early in the season. But I think the portal has become an escape clause. And I think, unfortunately, what we don't talk about is how many kids are still left sitting in the portal right now, that left Division I scholarships, that left an educational opportunity, and aren't even playing basketball. So while we highlight the Remy Martins of the world that go into the transfer portal and go ahead and win a national championship last year at Kansas, and congratulations to Remy for doing that, and leaving Arizona State. Arizona State's put itself in a pretty good position right now. They're off to a good start this season with a couple of transfers that have come in. Transfers have come into Spokane, and they've done a really good job and played vital roles in that program's success. So it does work. Freedom for student athletes is not a bad thing. But I do think that too many are hitting the eject button without getting the proper knowledge and proper understanding of what their real options actually are. Just because you have success at one place doesn't mean there's a lot of other people that are looking to bring you in and are going to give you that same opportunity to have the ball in your hands as often as you had it in the location you were at.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think it's crazy. Like, obviously people need to transfer. Like, sometimes it's not going to work, but it is crazy. But switching topics a little bit, you dabbled into coaching for a little bit, you know, and then you just said, I'm good. I'm going to go to broadcasting. And would you ever, be interested in coaching again? Or like, is broadcasting it's it for you? Like, you found your true love and you don't need coaching anymore?
Well, look, I thought really when I graduated, I got that job at Pepperdine. It was insane. I was the youngest assistant coach in the country. I was coaching a kid that I actually played against in the state championship because he redshirted. And that was wild. I mean, that was hard. But my head coach, Jan Van Bredikoff, left to take the St. Bonaventure job. And he ended up taking the job well after the Final Four, which is when the coaching carousel is really going on. And so I thought, I thought we were all coming back. We're running back at Pepperdine. Things are going to be good. This is going to be year 2 of my career, and then I'll probably try to bounce after that. But I had just gotten engaged to my wife, and she still had 2 years remaining at UCLA. And I was like, only in New York is in the middle of nowhere. And there's no FaceTime. There's no social media. Cell phones were barely being used. Like, this was not going to end well for that relationship. And I'm a realist when it comes to that. So I made the conscious decision that I was going to get out of coaching for my marriage. And I said, I'll figure it out after that. And it took me a while to figure it out. But I called back up the people that had given me the opportunity. This is why I'm so proud of you, Drew, for starting this now, because I started my television stuff when I was at UCLA my junior year. I picked up the mic before the game and told the broadcasters, you have the easiest job in the world. And guys like, really, what would you say? And I did this whole open for an Arizona State game that we were playing. And I didn't know the truck had the microphone was open in the truck, and the executive producer of Fox Sports West was in the truck. Comes out, who is that? And I was probably throwing up hook shots. It's like 2 hours before game time, so messing around. Like, there's nobody in there except for me. And he goes, come here. He's like, do you want to do TV? And I was like, yeah, I'll do TV. So I started doing this thing called the Farnham Files and personality pieces, getting comfortable with looking into a camera and not seeing it as something scary or difficult at all. We did, where did basketball players hang out on campus? I interviewed Steve Lavin. I was like, why don't I play more? Like, it was all a bunch of fun stuff like that, And so I called them up, and I never got paid for it because NIL and all that stuff never existed. So I had to do it for free. And so when I got out of coaching, that was one of my first calls. I was like, you know what? I think I did pretty well when I did that for like 2 years for you guys. Can you give me a chance? And so they're like, yeah, let's do high school football. And I did sideline for high school football, and the microphone was like shaking. I was like all nervous and everything. That was awful. And it grew, and just rep after rep, it just grew. And I studied and I listened and I learned. So, would I get back into coaching? The answer is yes. Have I interviewed for jobs in the past year, even in coaching, for a head coach job? Yes, I have. Would I go down that path? It would have to be the right path, because this is a great job, working for ESPN, covering the sport. Drew, you know how much I love doing my job. And I have not minced words with telling you how much I appreciate what you've done for the game of college basketball, and how much fun I've had, enjoyed covering you and your personality, as well as so many countless other players across the country over the last, 13 years at ESPN, but last 22 years overall of actually doing this. And the life that I've been able to provide for my family has been beyond what I ever could have pictured for myself. And having a son that's now in the application process and figuring out where he's going to go to college, having a daughter who, is about to fly over and train with Man City's women's team as a soccer goalkeeper at 15 years of age. My little guy who's 12, we've built a nice life for ourselves. So it'd have to be the right fit and something perfect for me to get back into coaching. Otherwise, I love telling the stories of the athletes. I love celebrating. One of the coolest things happened last week. Jackson Watkins from North Carolina hit a 3-point shot to give him 100 points, which gave him biscuits for everybody in the crowd.
I saw that on SportsCenter. Yeah.
Okay. So Jackson Watkins is a walk-on, and I'm sitting on the set in Bristol, and boom, that guy hits the shot. Everybody goes crazy. And they're like, oh, it's for biscuits. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. We're going to put that in the highlight for sure. And so I'm like, Jackson Watkins, and I look, never scored. Never's made a bucket in a North Carolina uniform. I found out his dad's name, his mom's name. I'm going on the bio, and we come off and I make a big deal about it, because it is a big deal. It's as big as a deal as Drew going in that game during COVID at San Francisco, where you didn't miss in the first half. I don't know how many you had in the first half. You probably remember, but it was like your points per minute was like 3 points per 1 minute that you were playing on that game in San Francisco that year. And for this kid, that was that moment. And he may not have another moment this whole year. He's a senior. He may never have that moment again the rest of the year. And I was like, I told my broadcast partner, I'm like, we're going in on this. We're going to go all in on this. So the next morning I wake up and I go to Twitter, and here it is in my DMs, is this kid thanking me for talking about him, thanking me for him making his shot. And I told him, I said, listen, my responsibility as a broadcaster is not just to celebrate the Drew Timmies that put up good numbers every single night. It's having awareness of those moments that come at the end of the game. It's having a moment that might come out of left field. Somebody gets put in a game, it's the first time they've ever been in the first half of a game in college basketball. That is a significant moment, because that moment may be the videotape, the DVD, the MP3, MP4, whatever it is, that they show to their grandchildren one day. And that's how serious I take the role that I have as a storyteller and a person that has to understand the moment that surrounds the game.
First of all, as a former walk-on, shout out to that kid. Former walk-on myself, shout out to that kid. And I would have done the same thing. I would have DM'd you right away, and I would have been like, yo, man, thank you so much. Because, yeah, I mean, people that know the walk-on role, it's a struggle down there at the end of the bench every day, every game. That's an amazing moment that he had, and it was so cool that it was for the free biscuits or whatever. Like, it meant something more than just like, oh, I got in and I hit a three. So that's super cool. Do you have any advice though to like someone like Drew, that sees himself maybe doing both of these, or at least like segueing into this whenever his basketball career comes to an end? Hopefully that's not for a while, but like, what kind of advice do you offer to like players who try to like, get in the mix of both of these things, playing, broadcasting?
Study. When you watch tape to know your opponent, you watch tape, you look at the scouting report to know your opponent. When you're watching games and you listen to broadcasters, what do you like? What do you dislike? What kind of commentator do you want to be? And don't just listen to basketball. Like, that's the big thing for me. Like, I listen to everybody. Like, I listen to Allie Wagner call the World Cup, and I think she's phenomenal at Fox in the way that she presents those games. I think she's a beast. You look at guys like Herbstreit. What has made Kirk Herbstreit Kirk Herbstreit? What makes Pat McAfee Pat McAfee? What makes, Dick Vitale, Raph, those legends that we'll never see again in the broadcasting world? What has given them the longevity? What has made them special and unique? And there's a difference in all of them. But the one thing I would tell you is passion. Like, what is your passion? Like, are you able to allow your passion to come through for the game? And don't try to be them, but try to take from them the understanding of, how did he see that? Why was that point so important for him to make? And ask that why. And I think if Drew does that, he'll be just fine, because he has his own unique personality. He's unapologetically who he is. And that's what I think draws so much attention to him as a player, whether it's positive or whether it's negative. And you've dealt with both. But I think that as a broadcaster, that's that. The other thing, too, is when you're watching film. How do you watch film? Like, I'm watching film countless hours per day right now, because in studio I've got to know every team. I don't have just right. One team. WCC conference play for me is easy. That's the easiest thing I have on my schedule. Okay, because here's what I do. I go, okay, so Gonzaga St. Mary's, Gonzaga BYU, BYU St. Mary's. Those are 6 of my games right there, because they play twice. So those are 6 of my games on ESPN. I know that. Okay, fine. I see those teams. Like, I know what Randy Bennett's going to do right now. I can tell you how he's going to try to scheme to take Drew out of the game. And then Drew will laugh because Drew kills them every single time they play, with the exception of last year.
You jinxed me. That game.
I did. Because you have been killing them for so long.
It was the meanest announcer's jinx of all jinxes. It was crazy.
It was
crazy.
And I was like, I can't believe I'm watching this right now. And they win. Dave Fleming and I are getting pushed and thrusted out onto the floor. Our broadcast table literally explodes, like off the breaks that they have on the table there at center court. But look, that's what makes it fun. That is what makes it great, and enjoying those moments. But in studio, I've got to have at least a 30,000-foot view on almost every team in the country. And I have to have an understanding of what's making them great, what's not making them great, why are they doing this, who's that player. And so when I'm doing my studio hits, like, often I look at the games, I talk to our producers, and then I start going back through on Synergy, which is a great website that allows me to watch any game anywhere that's played in the world. And I start going through and I just start picking out things that are important to me. So that's what Drew should do. Every opponent that he faces, what makes them unique, what makes them great, how are they doing it? Because that's the stories you have to tell.
Do you ever balance out like your priorities? Like, I know you said you have to have a 30,000 reach, but like, is there a conference or like a couple conferences that become more of a priority than the rest? Like, obviously the high major ones, but like you said, you have to have a firm grasp and understanding on the whole landscape. So like, how do you even balance your time to, you know.
I don't. There's no time.
It's got to be so random. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, like really, Feast Week is a great week for me to get a really quick look at everybody. So what usually starts in August, I call coaches in August and I say, what do you like about your team right now? Who has been the player that has improved the most over the course of the summer? And then the last thing is, if you're going to accomplish your goals this year, what has to change? What's the one thing that's keeping you awake as we get to September? And coaches are really honest at that time of the year. Like if I ask Mark that question next week, he's going to give me the coach answer. If I ask Mark that question in August, he's telling me exactly where they're at. So I've learned to ask those questions early over the course of the summer as they're coming out of their summer workouts. And then that gives me a perspective, and I type it all up on my own. I don't read the preview magazines because I want to formulate my own thoughts. I don't want somebody else formulating my thoughts for me.
Right.
And then once we get to Feast Week, you know, we're 12 hours a day on the set in Bristol, and there's 6 monitors in front of me with 2 teams playing in every game. And you're like, oh, Zach Edey's really good. That guy's going to be a problem. Oh, hey, UConn looks a lot better than they did last year. They're going to be a problem. Brandon Miller's pretty good. And so you start just taking notes. And I just have this notepad next to me at all times. And I'm just writing and scribbling and writing and scribbling. And by the time we get out of November and we get to December, you know, the games kind of get broken up a little bit in their schedule. Like Drew, they only played 1 game last week. So games get spread out a little bit more. That allows me a little bit more time to really lock in. And there's a couple of things that you look at. Who's the stars? Who's going to be the guys that we're talking about all year long that are stars? Doesn't mean they have to come from great teams, but they're stars.
Right.
Who are the great teams? Who are the teams that are good enough to make the Final Four? And who's the teams that maybe could improve that haven't tapped out yet? Because the last thing you want to do, and Drew knows this as well, you don't want to tap out on December 19th and 20th. You want to get better as the season goes along, and you want to be playing your best when your best is needed in March, period.
That's why I love this team. We are nowhere near tapped out. We still got a long ways to go. But last question for you. What's been your favorite team to cover, most surprising, and then also the most player out of nowhere that just surprised you?
I think, it's funny. I mean, I spend so much damn time in Spokane. It's really hard not to say Gonzaga.
You even got your own flatbread.
They have my own flatbread.
What don't you have here?
Which has become a joke. And by the way, I actually bought a bed from the Davenport too and had it shipped home for my son.
Wait, is that flatbread thing? Is that flatbread thing real?
Yeah.
What, does it taste any good? It's a Sean Farnham.
It's good. And one of the great things about it is the community around the program. And Drew knows this really, really well. But, we raised $18,000 last year, I think, or $16,000 for Coaches versus Cancer in one night. I served the flatbread at the Davenport Hotel. I wore their outfit, and I walked around, and so many Gonzaga fans came through and ordered it that we were averaging, I think, 3 flatbreads ordered per minute for 4 straight hours. Like, that's insane.
That's crazy OER. That's crazy OER.
And that doesn't surprise you. Yeah. And
Not at all, though.
Yeah. So, I mean, and what makes college basketball special is the great environments. So here's what I would say. I think that the Kennel Club is one of the best student sections in the country. They bring it for all the games I'm there. I know sometimes maybe it may not be exactly the same, but when I'm there for those big games, it's as loud as any venue in the country. I think going to Allen Fieldhouse and doing a game at Fog Allen is like going to a cathedral. Like you feel like you're going to a church of basketball, not so much just watching and observing a college basketball game. Rupp Arena on Super Tuesday, when they had Devin Booker and Karl Anthony Towns and those guys were going undefeated, like that was as wild and as crazy and as a great time that I've ever had as a broadcaster. So like those would be my 3 that I would go with more than any as a broadcaster. I enjoy going to those places because of the fans, the student sections in each of those locations, and just how good the programs are. Like nobody wants to go to a place where you're not winning. Like, I know we're in this day and age of like, look at me, I'm averaging 25. Good for you.
Doesn't sell.
Are you winning? Are you winning? Like, it's still a basketball game. Like, I know sometimes we go to highlights and we're like, LeBron James had 35 tonight, and the Wizards won by 20. And you're like, wait, why did we just show LeBron James for like the entire highlight? SportsCenter does it all the time. It drives me nuts. Like, winning matters to me. And when you get the opportunity to go around winning programs on a consistent basis, that's cool as hell.
No
It's
doubt.
my biggest beef with ESPN, man. They always kick my Cowboys while they're down.
Oh, come on. My Niners and Brock Purdy are going to light you guys up just like we did last year. Hey, why don't you guys go ahead and run a quarterback sneak again and try to put the ball down and see how that works out for you?
Dude, what a week for you to bring up the Cowboys, man. Like, you should have never
That's what I'm saying. We lost
that
to
up.
Jacksonville, and it's
Should've
all,
never
it's all
brought
I
him
hear
up.
about. And they're like, it's Dak's fault for throwing a pick. No, it hit him in the chest plate. Like, it happens. Sorry, it's not
it was a
Dak's
bad
fault.
bounce. It was a bad bounce.
You know, it's like us, with Mr. Irrelevant becoming like an all-pro in 2 weeks. Like, it's, just different organizations have different expectations. That's all.
Sean, I got one more question for you, and then we're going to wrap it up. Where did this go? Yeah, your favorite moment as an analyst, or your favorite game that you've called? Can you have anything that sticks out?
Favorite game is an easy one. Indiana at Illinois on a Thursday night in the Big Ten. Illinois had lost 6 out of 7. Indiana was number 1 in the country with Zeller and Oladipo and all of those guys. A backdoor cut by Tyler Gaffney with 0.6 seconds left to go on the clock. He catches it and just throws it up, and it goes in. And it was a court storming like I've never seen before. I mean, it was crazy. It was madness. And there's so few times where you get to see number 1 actually go down. Like on a buzzer beater. And certainly to a team that looked like they had no life whatsoever. So to me, that's the game that kind of sticks out most. I think the moment that was kind of the coolest, there's a couple that come to mind. I would say, hosting the Grand Ole Opry at the SEC tournament, like getting to go on stage and announce like the country music acts at the Grand Ole Opry as a broadcaster. That was pretty cool.
That's dope.
Yeah. That was pretty fun. Going to Shanghai, China, with the Pac-12 was kind of cool to see Shanghai and see a different culture. So there's been some great moments like that have allowed me to go to a bunch of places that I would have never gone to in my life, and that I've really, really enjoyed. Going to Saturday night football in the SEC, LSU versus Florida on a Saturday night when they were both undefeated. And Leonard Fournette was the running back for LSU. The 105,000 people screaming Garth Brooks, calling Baton Rouge. That's pretty awesome. So those are the moments, because the game itself, you kind of lock in. Like, I'm exhausted after games. Like, yeah. I wear myself out because mentally I'm like, okay, don't miss anything. Don't mess up anyone's names. Know exactly what we're wanting to do. What is your moment here? That's pretty fun. And then interacting with the fans. Like, I remember a couple of years ago, I said to a fan at Gonzaga that, their fan base, their student section is very comfortable with talking to me. And one of the guys was wearing a cowboy hat and sunglasses. And he's like, "Wear my hat. Wear my hat." Like, for the first 10 minutes of the game. So I looked over. I was like, "Dude, stop. If you're up by 40, I'll wear your hat." And they're playing St. Mary's. I kid you not. They went up by 40. So
that's crazy.
As soon as the Zags went up by 40 on St. Mary's, this dude was like running to give me his hat. And so we come back out of commercial break, and I'm wearing the hat and the sunglasses and just having fun with it. Like, that's the best part of my job, is to have the fun and embrace the fun, embrace the uniqueness of the places that we go, that we get to cover the sport that I love. Yeah.
Hey, man. Well, we appreciate you bringing the fun to the Gimme Timme podcast. This was spectacular. Everything that we wanted, getting you on. So thank you, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And Mrs. Timme, you're an amazing woman. And I apologize for your son and his relentless assault on last week's podcast. He talks about getting coal in the stocking if you don't give a review.
I'm getting a lump of coal.
You're getting a lump of coal, Drew.
But I was getting a lump of coal like January 1st last year. So like I've been so
it's
far
probably
gone.
True.
I might as well just accumulate as much coal as I can at this point.
Hey, I think I'm going to see you guys about 3 or 4 times in January. So I'll see you real soon in person, Drew. Congratulations on doing this. Keep grinding, keep getting better. And if you can always ask me at any point in time for any advice. I'll be happy to reach out and make sure I give you good solid advice.
Appreciate you. And thank you so much for hopping on. We really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you soon.
Sean, I'm envisioning the day when me, you, and Drew are on an ESPN panel together. So I'm putting that out there and manifesting it.
Let's just hope it's not at this year's Final Four down in Houston. You know, 'cause that would mean my man's not playing. So, like, and I know that's what he wants. I know that's what he wants.
Yeah. All right, man. Appreciate you.
All right, guys. Be good. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas to you guys.
Yeah, you too.